Okay. So whenever we talk, I just feel that there is space when we talk for me to explore some things in a pretty exciting way. And I'm particularly noticing that when we talk, I am more inclined to hear myself on a deeper level. And as you know, I've been fascinated by the fact that you keep talking about people's calling. And I'm wondering if you feel that you could put your calling into words, because I'm thinking it has something to do with why I feel that I can explore life more deeply when we talk. May not be.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Am I doing this right? Okay. Um, my calling, as I understand it, is to help other people figure out and follow their calling. That doesn't mean it's the most fun, like the way I go out and have fun or stay in and have fun. It doesn't mean that's my art necessarily. There's some distinction there. Like I'm writing a memoir. I am writing things all the time for raising clarity. I often coach people on things other than their calling, and I love that. Like I love my work, but my calling seems to be to help people find their calling. And it looks to me, I see a lot of things. I see them in the air, kind of visually. It looks like a little flame, and it's usually in their heart. But that's just like when I get a sense that somebody's really close and things kind of align, I get that feeling. It's more than a seeing of that's the flame that animates them. And it can unify really disparate, odd things that people think have nothing to do with each other. So it's not necessarily monetizable, but it might be, or part of it might be. It's not necessarily the same as your work. It's not necessarily the same as your art. It's definitely, to me, not something somebody told you to do. It doesn't exist for other people. It might help other people. It might not, in your mind, obviously help other people. It's the soul spark, the scintilla anime, Tony. When I was in grad school, we held a salon. I instigated a series of salons because I thought, here I am in grad school, and it doesn't feel like what I wanted it to feel like. I wanted it to feel like a meeting of the minds. And I said we needed to have some salons to just talk with each other about ideas, not for credit, just faculty and students. And we did it. And one of the faculty and I worked on the origins of the university. What were the origins of the university in the West? The university actually started in Mali. The earliest university that we know about started in Mali. But in the West, it was a spiritual endeavor, and it had to do with the soul spark. I will summarize that history. The scintilla anime, and I'm not a Latinist, but that's what I remember. And now that I think about it, that's kind of what I'm going for. And I feel that because it's my calling, I can tell when someone is on to something and when it's their soul spark and when it's not. But I would be very unlikely to tell someone it wasn't. Well, that's not quite true. If people want to convince me that something they think that should be their calling is their calling, I probably would try to convince them to at least broaden their horizons.
You know what strikes me as you talk is the way you look at calling is actually the most practical thing I can imagine. I
Mm.
mean, it really, you're giving people permission to listen to things that have been speaking to them probably for their whole lives, and we haven't known how to listen to. We haven't known how to notice and how to respond to them. Um, and it's interesting that you don't seem interested. You don't seem to want to define this. You seem to want to get me to experience it, and I love that. I mean, it's not like you don't. want to go into specifics. You want me to go into specifics about what's moving me or what isn't. And I'm, we've been talking for years and I'm just beginning to see this clearly.
Mm. And that's partly because what you're helping me do with these podcasts at this point is help me understand what I think and how to
Sure.
say it.
Sure.
So it's also because I didn't know how to say it. I felt I had to defend it in a different way. And I don't. And I love, because I'm a very practical person, I love that you said it was very practical. So what I'm doing with someone is listening to their details. And I'm not particularly listening to the content of the details, although that's the practicality, is how you will do your calling, is the details. But I'm listening to how real does this sound to this person? Does it sound, are they really convinced that this is their calling, or are they trying to convince themselves? Is it a real calling? Is it calling them? Can they detach enough from it to even hear the thing calling? Right. I'm listening at a different level when someone's talking. And because I'm not afraid of money, especially, and I'm not afraid of how to make it or making it or not making it and living with less or doing with more or whatever, I can tease apart the voice of money and fear that's often connected with money and say, that's great that you want to do that and you would enjoy doing that for money. And I'm listening. Is that your calling? Because it very well may not be, or it may be opposite, sort of near, but not the same as your calling. Right. So that's so cool.
I'm reading a book now by George Saunders, the wonderful short story writer who's a professor at Syracuse. And he says they've got a program there. They only let 6 people a year in, and they get 600 or 700 applications. And it's a writing program where he's teaching people to write short stories, but he uses famous Russian short stories and has them analyze them to understand better what writing is. And the first story he takes up is something by Chekhov, and it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. And at the end of it, he says, let's look at what you might have gained from this. What did the main character gain from it? And it's like, well, the main character, if she gained anything, gained a realization that she's lonely and probably always will be. And it's very real. And then he says, but you know what we gained from it? You fell in love with this character. Your empathy began to emerge. And I thought, oh my God, that's true. And he seems to be up to the same thing you're up to. And I see the practicality in both of them. That is, you want us to listen to the world in a way that the world's been talking to us and our spirit has been talking to us, but we haven't quite known how to listen to it. And it's almost like when you and I talk, I'm gaining some experience of listening to that part of the universe.
And yourself, through the universe channeled through yourself. And it's so beautiful. By listening to me, you're helping me do that. And you're saying that I'm doing that with you. So the gift is the gift of yourself, that you get more of yourself, of your own soul spark. And then I think once it's fairly clear, we can, like you do with a little spark, you can nourish it and bank it. And then it grows. And it doesn't need to devour your entire life. Your life kind of fuels it. And it can stay in this very stable place. I think the great aha for me was, you don't have to give up everything to follow your calling. You don't have to give up anything, but you gain everything. You gain yourself and your sort of articulation with the universe, how you are a spark of the universe. You gain that, and you can do your work. You can raise your kids or whatever you're doing, figure out your health or any of that stuff.
It's that's my experience in talking to you. It's like you're not limiting me to something. You're helping me hear something that is so natural for me that I naturally know what to do and what not to do. And it's interesting that when Saunders is talking about the goals of his program, he said the gist of it is people come to us already very talented. What we want is for them to learn how to write something that only they could ever write. And that's what I think we're going
Wow.
I feel that, and it's so natural and real, and that's why it gets practical.
Lovely. I mean, I bow to George Saunders and the 1% of people who it sounds like get into that program, but the connection that you are drawing, and there is only one way to do your call. Like there's only one person who could do your calling. There isn't only one way to do it, but there is only, even if your call, that's another misconception, is that like it's like somebody else's, so it must be boring or it must not really be your calling. It's like, no, if you do it, it'll be completely different. I mean, just like those 6 people, they could all be given the same writing prompt if that's how they even work, and they'd all have different stories. So
Yes,
it's utterly individual. It's kind of amazing. And you
it
can
is.
listen to it and it will tell you if you, it's kind of like, I'm like the radio dial and helping people like, whoop, whoop, oh, there it is. Okay. And they don't need me anymore. It's like, okay, good. Go do your thing. Right. Oh, Tony, this is so great.
It is. I'm loving it.